getting your girlfriend into gaming, is it the holy grail or is it the biggest mistake you've ever made? So one of the things I want to clarify before I start going into this is to be really inclusive and politically correct. When I'm using the term girlfriend, I also mean partner in general. This can apply to everyone, getting non-gamers into games, whether they're your girlfriend, your partner, whatever. Just to be really clear, okay? So I think for a lot of people, the idea of having a gamer girlfriend is really cool. You know, having someone that you live with that you can, or that you see regularly that you can play games with really often is quite appealing. Sometimes it can be quite hard to get pick-up games. And just having that person that's already in your life doing something that you really enjoy and that you really like. It's also slightly a little bit nerdy and isn't something that you would maybe discuss with everyone in terms of like your work colleagues, and you know, it's your gamer part of your life. So the idea of it seems really, really appealing, but I guess something we have to consider is you'll then have your partner involved in every aspect of your life, and every healthy relationship needs a point where you do your own thing, you have your own hobbies, you have your own mates. So there's that kind of way up, that kind of balance as to, you know, if I get my partner in this, then okay, they are going to be at game night, they are going to be playing with me and the guys, or me, you know, with everyone. So I think it's got its ups and downs, and whether you choose to do that is something that's worth thinking about. So I have had success with this. I have had two partners that have not been gamers at all, and now who genuinely have played games with me. So it's almost a tried and tested method, and I think it's quite applicable and quite a fun way of doing it. And I think it can really test your relationship in terms of some of the games, and also it's got the benefits of bringing you closer together. So if you want to give it a try, let me know how it goes for you guys. So the first thing I think is really important is to almost have that kind of gateway drug, getting someone into your hobby when it's not necessarily that much accessible, to get someone into it's a non-gamer to then have a look at a game such as Infinity or 40k. It's really bloody complex, thinking about all the rules, all the interactions. Each miniature has something completely different, and then you've got another element of the hobby of putting things together and painting, which not everyone can do straight out the bat. Not all of us can do it after years and years of practice. So I don't think it's necessarily the easiest way to do it. So breaking it down into a system of being really easy is really important if this is going to go well at all. You've also got the aspect of you're bringing maybe someone who's cool or not really part of nerd culture into something that is really bloody nerdy. You know, we're essentially playing with toy soldiers and imagining a battle going on based upon mathematics and, you know, random chance. So it's not as cool. However, we're kind of in that point of time where there is a board game renaissance going on. Nerdy is becoming cool and geeks. You have Marvel taking over the cinemas, and you've got board games coming into family homes, not just your standard Monopoly, but something a little bit out there. So I think using that is quite important for this to go well as well. So I think the first part of introducing non-gamers into games is using the culturally acceptable gateway drug. And for me, that's Cards Against Humanity. So Cards Against Humanity is a horrendous game if you haven't played it, but it's very easy. The taboo nature of it makes it funny. It's a good drinking game, and it's just hilarious to play with your mates. So you're essentially getting someone into a card game that isn't typical because it's popular. It's very popular on Facebook and it's quite widely accepted. So I think that's a really, really good start to getting someone into this side of your life, your hobby. So then moving forward, it's kind of like, well, where do we go from here? So to Tabletop by Will Wheaton is a fantastic resource if you want to have a look up at games that are good.
Today on Tabletop, we're going to throw some dice. Enroll for it, the Council of Verona. Coup, the concept.
Tokaido, Sheriff
of Forbidden Sushi from the Stone Age against 5 legendary junior kingdom.
The Battle Wizards duel at Mount Skullsfire.
They're really, really good in terms of looking at accessible games that are multiplayer. So going, I think, a way that to move this forward and to be good is to start looking at games, board games, that you two or you and your friends play against the game. It makes the rules easier to learn for that non-gamer, and it's cooperative. So it's not necessarily as challenging, and you win together or you lose together. So that's really important. It makes it an easier transition in terms of learning this type of stuff. So some of the games that I really like are Kings of Tokyo. You've got things like Pandemic. Pandemic is a fantastic, fantastic game for non-gamers. Medium complexity, but you're working against the game, and it's got a huge amount of replayability, which is really nice. And then you can kind of start to step up into things like Betrayal of the House on the Hill and Zombicide. So Zombicide is sort of introducing the miniatures aspect and replayability, and also characters that have different abilities, essentially. And you've got things like movement skills and things like that. So starting to up the pace. Then I think moving into board games where the two of you are competing is quite a good idea in terms of moving to that. So Pandemic has expansions for that, and then you've also got sort of other board games maybe like Carcassonne, things like that, where you're then starting to directly compete with one another, which I think is quite interesting. So then it's kind of like, well, how do you make the jump between board games and miniature games? So miniature games are a different entity in their own self, and I think upon the nerd scale, where you've maybe got stuff like video games, comic books, board games, miniature games, RPGs, and then LARPing, stuff like that. So I think it's slightly a bigger jump. Saying that though, I think maybe RPGs can be quite useful in terms of getting people into gaming, because you don't necessarily need the skills of being able to paint. If you're quite verbally articulate, imaginative, you can do role-playing quite easily, especially if you do it maybe in the third person. It doesn't seem quite as scary as doing it in the first person and putting on a voice and whatnot. But you have games like Call of Cthulhu, maybe where the setting is just a bit strange and a bit horror-like, as opposed to something very fantasy. So I think those can be quite easy ways, and have been for me, to get people into that. Especially if someone's quite good at writing, maybe that's a really interesting way of moving towards gaming. You've also got a party of you as well, so it's not just kind of the two of you playing games. So that could sometimes, when you have a whole group, couple of non-gamers, couple of gamers, that can be quite nice to get people into RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons start kits. Very easy to get hold of, very cheap, just to run and go with it, because it's already got the characters pre-made. You've also then got things like you can put certain spins on it. If they're very much into Harry Potter, you can do that. But speaking of which, there is a Harry Potter miniature games coming out. So maybe that's the way that you get someone into it. So moving on to their miniature games. So how do I move into getting my partner who doesn't play games or has maybe dabbled in a few board games into miniature games? I think choosing simplicity is a really, really important part. If it's going to go smooth, maybe it's different for everyone. Individual things might work. However, I think things like X-Wing is that almost crossover from board game to miniatures game, in the sense that you don't have to worry about terrain, you don't have to then teach about line of sight, and you can keep it quite simple if you take out certain cards. Not take out certain cards, but you don't use that many interactions with sort of buffing up your ships. And you can just play the missions, which are quite nice. and you've only got a couple of things to worry about. You don't have a whole army where you have to move lots of things, and things get very complex. You can just have sort of 3 or 2 ships each in 100 point, or even one ship each if you have a big enough ship, and then go for it. It's also not that much of an investment if you want to start and have a try, because you're not spending £300 on an army, another 400 on a table. You know, you can do it on your kitchen table with the starter set for 25 quid, and maybe toss in a mat to make it look nice and pretty. But you know, I think that's a really easy way of doing it before you then get into miniatures games. Then I suppose you've got the chance of moving on to actual miniature games themselves. I think this can be quite I'd like to think that there might be certain things you can do. So using pop culture games, such as the Harry Potter game, or I don't know, Doctor Who game if they're a little bit nerdy. You've got Frostgrave, which is really simple and really accessible way of doing it. And you can put a spin on that, you know, making their own wizard team. Very, very easy game, very nice to play. And then I suppose moving up to more complex games and using introductory sets to make that happen. You know, Infinity's difficult at the best of times, but using those games that introduce the rules mission by mission can be really useful. And I think there's something about not going too hard against them. Teaching them like any learner. If you absolutely thrash someone, then they're not going to want to come back and play with you, are they? So slowly moving into that, and just hopefully having success with it. So I'd be really interested to know if you've got any tips about how you get friends, family, partners into gaming, and how you've done that. Good luck. Let me know if this works or not, and I'll speak to you guys next week.